In the heart of London's sprawling metropolis, tucked away in an inconspicuous antique bookstore, a seemingly ordinary day turned extraordinary. Andrew Carlyle, a seasoned historian with a penchant for the peculiar, stumbled upon an ancient tome hidden behind a dusty stack of forgotten volumes. Its cover, made of weathered leather, bore an ominous symbol, a serpent entwined around a broken crown. Andrew's pulse quickened as he carefully opened the book, revealing yellowed pages filled with cryptic writings and unsettling illustrations. This was no ordinary book. This was the Cursed Codex, a legend whispered about in hushed tones among scholars and occult enthusiasts. As Andrew delved deeper into the book, he felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. The air around him grew heavy, and the shadows in the room seemed to lengthen and dance. Unbeknownst to him, he had unwittingly awakened a malevolent force that had lain dormant for centuries. That night, strange occurrences began to plague his life. Objects moved on their own, disembodied whispers filled the air, and a pervasive sense of dread settled over him. Desperate and terrified, Andrew reached out to an old friend, Dr. Kate Morton, a renowned parapsychologist. Kate, intrigued and concerned by his frantic call, agreed to visit him the next day. She arrived at his cluttered apartment to find him pale and trembling, clutching the codex as if his life depended on it. The two friends spent hours examining the book, deciphering its cryptic text, and piecing together its dark history. The codex, they discovered, was created by a long-forgotten secret society that had dabbled in dark rituals and summoning of otherworldly entities. The society's final ritual had gone horribly wrong, resulting in the deaths of its members, and the codex being cursed to bring misfortune and death to anyone who possessed it. As they read further, they realized that the book contained instructions for summoning powerful demons, opening portals to other dimensions, and wielding unimaginable power. Realizing the gravity of their discovery, Andrew and Kate knew they needed help. They contacted a secret government agency specializing in paranormal investigations, the Paranormal Containment Unit, PCU. The team, led by the no-nonsense Commander James Thatcher, comprised tech expert Mia Ramirez, occult specialist Dr. Alastair Graves, and empathic medium Lily Chen. The PCU arrived at Andrew's apartment, armed with state-of-the-art ghost hunting equipment and a wealth of experience in dealing with the supernatural. As the team set up their equipment, Lily began to sense a malevolent presence in the room. Her face grew pale and she whispered, "It's here." The air grew colder, and the lights flickered ominously. Suddenly, a shadowy figure materialized in the corner of the room, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The PCU sprang into action, using EMF detectors, thermal cameras, and spirit boxes to track and communicate with the entity. Commander Thatcher barked orders, and Mia quickly set up a containment field to trap the shadow. Dr. Graves recited incantations from an ancient grimoire, hoping to weaken the entity. The Shadow Man let out an unearthly shriek, lunging at Andrew. Just as it was about to reach him, Lily stepped forward, her eyes glowing with a fierce determination. She raised her hands, and a blinding light emanated from her, forcing the Shadow Man to retreat. The team managed to trap the entity, but they knew this was only the beginning. The Codex's power was far greater than they had anticipated, and the malevolent forces it had awakened were just getting started. They needed to uncover the secrets of the Codex and find a way to destroy it before it unleashed unspeakable horrors upon the world. The Paranormal Containment Unit, PCU, moved their operations to a secure facility where they could study the Codex and strategize without fear of interference from malevolent entities. The facility, an old, fortified mansion on the outskirts of London, was equipped with advanced technology and a library filled with ancient texts. The team gathered in the main hall, the Codex laid out on a large oak table, its eerie presence palpable. Dr. Alastair Graves, an expert in the occult, took the lead in deciphering the Codex's cryptic text. "This book is a gateway," he explained, "a conduit for summoning and controlling dark forces. It's written in a combination of Latin, Greek, and several ancient languages I can't even recognize. But one thing is clear, it was never meant to be used by the uninitiated. As Dr. Graves meticulously translated the text, Commander Thatcher and Mia Ramirez focused on the practical aspects of their mission. They needed to identify the locations where the secret society had performed their rituals and uncover any remaining artifacts that might be linked to the Codex. Mia's tech expertise proved invaluable as she sifted through historical records, maps, and surveillance footage. Their first lead took them to an abandoned church in the countryside, rumored to have been one of the secret society's primary meeting places. The church, now overgrown with ivy and shrouded in fog, exuded an air of foreboding. As the team approached, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and distant hoot of an owl. Inside the church, the team split up to cover more ground. Dr. Graves and Kate Morton examined the altar and the surrounding area, searching for clues or hidden compartments. Mia and Lily set up their equipment to detect any paranormal activity, while Commander Thatcher kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. Lily's empathic abilities soon picked up on a lingering presence. "There are spirits here," she whispered, trapped and tormented by the rituals performed in this place. She closed her eyes and concentrated, hoping to communicate with the entities. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a faint whisper echoed through the church. "Help us!" Mia's thermal camera detected a cold spot near the altar, and Dr. Graves discovered a hidden compartment containing a collection of ancient relics, candles, daggers, and a small, intricately carved box. As he opened the box, a sense of dread washed over him. Inside was a fragment of the Codex, its pages filled with more cryptic symbols and illustrations. The discovery was significant, but it also posed a greater risk. The fragment's presence seemed to agitate the spirits, and the church began to tremble. Shadows danced along the walls, and a low, guttural growl resonated through the air. The team quickly regrouped, but before they could leave, they were confronted by a crawler, a twisted, skeletal creature with elongated limbs and hollow eyes. Commander Thatcher fired his weapon, but the bullets passed through the creature as if it were made of smoke. Dr. Graves chanted an incantation, and Lily projected a shield of light to protect the team. The crawler screeched in pain and retreated, disappearing into the shadows. The team knew they had to act fast. With the fragment secured, they raced back to their vehicle, the church's walls closing in around them. As they drove away, they could hear the distant wails of the trapped spirits, their cries echoing in the night. Back at their facility, the team examined the fragment and the relics, piecing together more of the Codex's dark history. They realized that the church was just one of many locations linked to the secret society's rituals. The true extent of the Codex's power was still unknown, but one thing was certain: they were dealing with forces beyond their comprehension. The next step was clear. They had to locate and secure the remaining fragments of the Codex before it fell into the wrong hands. The safety of the world depended on their success, and the clock was ticking. The morning after their harrowing encounter at the church, the PCU gathered in the mansion's grand library, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of desk lamps. The ancient relics and the Codex fragment were spread out on a large table. Commander Thatcher paced the room, his eyes darting between his team and the artifacts. "We need to find the other fragments, and fast," he declared. "Mia, what did you find on the locations linked to this secret society?" Mia Ramirez, her fingers flying over the keys of her laptop, brought up a digital map dotted with red markers. "There are several potential sites, but one stands out, Bettiscombe Manor. It has a long history of strange occurrences and ties to occult practices. Locals call it the Screaming Skull House." Kate Morton, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think it's connected to the Codex?" Mia tapped the screen, zooming in on a satellite image of the manor. "It's not just the history. I found an old document referencing a congregation of the Chosen meeting there. The dates match the time when the Codex was actively used." Commander Thatcher nodded. "Pack your gear. We're heading to Bettiscombe Manor. The drive to the manor was tense. Andrew Carlyle, seated next to Mia, couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over him since finding the Codex. "Do you think we'll encounter more of those things?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia glanced at him, her expression serious. "If we do, we're ready. We've faced worse before." As they approached Bettiscombe Manor, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The manor loomed before them, its weathered stone walls and overgrown gardens exuding an air of neglect and menace. The team disembarked, their breath visible in the chilly air. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of dusty corridors and decaying rooms. The floorboards creaked underfoot, and cobwebs hung like ghostly veils from the ceiling. The team split into pairs, Mia and Kate taking the east wing, while Thatcher, Andrew, and Lily explored the west. In one of the manor's dilapidated drawing rooms, Lily's senses were on high alert. She paused, her eyes narrowing as she focused on an unseen presence. "There's something here," she murmured, her voice tense. Commander Thatcher gripped his weapon tighter. "Stay sharp, everyone." Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the manor, reverberating off the walls. The team froze, their hearts pounding. Lily clutched her head, overwhelmed by the intense emotions flooding the room. "It's the skull," she gasped. "It's in agony." Andrew's eyes widened in horror. "The screaming skull. We need to find it." Following Lily's lead, they navigated the manor's dark corridors until they reached a small, hidden chamber. In the center of the room, on a dusty pedestal, sat a human skull. Its eye sockets seemed to bore into their souls, and the air around it vibrated with a palpable sense of dread. Kate and Mia rejoined the group, breathless and on edge. "We found an old diary," Kate said, holding up a tattered book. "It mentions rituals performed with the skull as a focal point." Commander Thatcher approached the skull cautiously. "We need to neutralize its influence," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "Dr. Graves, can you do it?" Graves, who had been quietly examining the room, nodded. "I'll need some time, but I believe I can bind the spirit." As Graves set to work, the manor seemed to come alive with activity. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, and faint whispers filled the air. The team stood guard, their nerves stretched to the breaking point. Just as Graves completed the ritual, a shadowy figure materialized in the doorway. It was a skinwalker, its twisted form shifting and contorting as it moved. Commander Thatcher fired his weapon, but the creature dodged with unnatural speed. The team fought valiantly, their combined efforts eventually forcing the skinwalker to retreat. Breathing heavily, they regrouped. Graves placed a protective charm on the skull, and the oppressive atmosphere began to lift. "This isn't over," Thatcher warned. "We still have to find the other fragments." Returning to their mansion headquarters, the team pored over the diary Kate had discovered. It detailed the Society's rituals and hinted at the locations of the remaining Codex fragments. "One passage mentions a hidden catacomb beneath the city," Kate said, tracing a finger over the faded text. "It could be our next lead." The catacombs were a labyrinthine network of tunnels and chambers beneath London's bustling streets, long forgotten by most. Armed with their equipment, the team descended into the depths, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. Lily led the way, her empathic senses guiding them through the darkness. "This place is ancient," she whispered, "and it's filled with restless spirits." Mia's thermal camera picked up faint heat signatures, likely residual energy from the past. "We're not alone down here," she said, her voice echoing in the narrow passage. The team pressed on, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. Suddenly, they came upon a large chamber, its walls lined with skeletal remains. In the center of the room stood an altar, upon which lay another fragment of the Codex. Dr. Graves approached the altar cautiously, chanting an incantation to ward off any lingering malevolent forces. As he reached for the fragment, a low growl resonated through the chamber. From the shadows emerged a crawler, its elongated limbs and hollow eyes making it a nightmarish sight. Commander Thatcher and Mia opened fire, their bullets doing little to slow the creature. Lily stepped forward, her hands glowing with an ethereal light. She unleashed a burst of energy that struck the crawler, causing it to howl in pain and retreat into the darkness. Graves secured the fragment, but the team knew they couldn't stay in the catacombs much longer. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the spirits grew more agitated. As they made their way back to the surface, they encountered more supernatural entities, shadow men that flickered in and out of existence, and the distant, echoing cries of the damned. The ascent was grueling, the air thick with the weight of centuries-old despair. Just as they neared the exit, a skinwalker appeared, blocking their path. Its form shifted and twisted, making it a difficult target. Commander Thatcher and Mia fired in unison, their combined assault forcing the creature back. With a final desperate push, the team burst out of the catacombs and into the safety of daylight. They regrouped at their mansion, exhausted but triumphant. They had secured another fragment, but the journey was far from over. Commander Thatcher addressed the team, his voice resolute. "We're making progress, but the worst is yet to come. We need to stay vigilant and be prepared for anything." The team nodded in agreement, their determination unwavering. They knew the dangers they faced, but they were united in their mission to prevent the Codex from unleashing its horrors upon the world. The stakes were higher than ever, and the journey ahead promised even greater challenges. The tension was palpable as the team gathered around the large oak table in the mansion's strategy room. Maps and ancient texts were spread out, with the latest Codex fragment at the center. Its eerie glow cast unsettling shadows on their faces. "We've decrypted part of the text," Mia announced, her eyes fixed on the fragment. "It points to the dark woods, near the outskirts of Newstead Abbey. Legend has it that those woods are haunted by something malevolent." Commander Thatcher leaned in, his expression grim. "Whatever is there, we need to face it. This is our next lead." The drive to the dark woods was uneventful, but the atmosphere changed drastically as they neared their destination. The trees, gnarled and twisted, loomed like silent sentinels. A thick fog rolled in, reducing visibility to mere feet. Lily shivered as they stepped into the woods. "This place is saturated with negative energy. We need to be on high alert." Their flashlights cut through the fog, revealing the narrow path ahead. The forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. The team froze, weapons drawn. "Stay close," Thatcher ordered, leading the way. They moved cautiously, every snap of a twig underfoot echoing in the oppressive silence. As they ventured deeper, they came across an old, abandoned cabin. Its door hung askew, and the windows were dark and empty. "Looks like the perfect place for something sinister," Andrew muttered, trying to lighten the mood. They entered the cabin, their flashlights revealing a scene of decay. Dust-covered furniture, cobwebs, and rotting floorboards greeted them. In the center of the room was a trapdoor. "Looks like we've found our way down," Kate said, her voice steady despite the tension. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a ladder leading into the darkness. One by one, they descended, their flashlights illuminating the earthen walls of a hidden tunnel. The tunnel led to a large underground chamber. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic. At the far end of the chamber was an altar, similar to the one in the catacombs, but this one was surrounded by grotesque statues. "Be ready for anything," Thatcher warned. As they approached the altar, the ground trembled. From the shadows emerged several crawlers, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. The team sprang into action, firing their weapons and using their training to fend off the creatures. Lily's hands glowed with energy as she unleashed a wave of force, knocking several crawlers back. "We need to destroy the altar," she shouted. Mia and Kate worked quickly, placing charges around the base of the altar. As they set the last charge, a shadow man appeared, its form shifting and flickering. "Go! I'll cover you," Thatcher yelled, opening fire on the shadow man. The team retreated up the ladder, emerging into the cabin just as the charges detonated. The The ground shook violently, and the cabin began to collapse. They sprinted out, barely making it to safety as the entire structure caved in. Breathless and covered in dirt, the team regrouped. "We got the fragment, but this isn't over," Thatcher said, holding up the piece of the codex they had retrieved. Lily looked back at the ruined cabin, a sense of unease washing over her. "The dark forces are getting stronger. We need to find the remaining fragments before they do." With renewed determination, the team made their way back to the mansion, ready to decipher the next clue in their dangerous quest. Back at the mansion, the team didn't waste any time. Mia and Andrew pored over the new fragment, cross-referencing it with their existing data. It was Andrew who found the next clue. "There's a reference here to an old lighthouse on the coast," he said, pointing to the fragment. "The Ravenswood Lighthouse. It was abandoned decades ago, after a series of mysterious deaths." "Sounds like our kind of place," Kate quipped, her smile not reaching her eyes. The drive to the lighthouse was long and tense. The weather grew increasingly stormy as they neared the coast, lightning illuminating the ominous silhouette of the lighthouse against the dark sky. Waves crashed violently against the rocks below, and the wind howled like a tormented spirit. They parked the SUV and made their way up the narrow, winding path to the lighthouse. The door was heavy and rusted, but Thatcher's determined shove forced it open with a screech. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of salt and decay. "We need to find the source of the hauntings," Thatcher said, leading the way up the spiraling staircase. The interior of the lighthouse was a labyrinth of tight corridors and steep stairs. Each room they passed through was more decrepit than the last, filled with broken furniture and eerie echoes of the past. They reached the top floor, where the lighthouse's lens room stood silent and abandoned. Lily paused, her eyes narrowing as she sensed something. "There's a presence here. It's strong." Suddenly, a ghostly figure materialized in the center of the room. It was a shadow man, its form flickering and unstable. The temperature dropped sharply, and their breath became visible in the freezing air. "Prepare for engagement," Thatcher ordered. The shadow man lunged at them, its form shifting and elongating. The team fired their weapons, but the bullets passed through it harmlessly. Lily stepped forward, her hands glowing with energy. She chanted an incantation, and a wave of light erupted from her, striking the shadow man and causing it to recoil. "Keep it busy," Graves shouted, pulling out a small vial of holy water. As the team engaged the shadow man, Graves moved to the center of the room, sprinkling the holy water in a circle. He began to chant, his voice rising above the howling wind and crashing waves. The shadow man shrieked, its form destabilizing further. With a final burst of energy, Lily and Graves combined their powers, banishing the shadow man in a blinding flash of light. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. "Is it over?" Mia asked, lowering her weapon. "For now," Thatcher replied, his eyes scanning the room. "But we need to find the codex fragment." They searched the lens room thoroughly, eventually finding a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside was the fragment, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. "Got it," Kate said, securing the fragment in her bag. "Let's get out of here before something else decides to show up." As they descended the lighthouse, the storm began to subside. They reached their SUV and drove back to the mansion, the weight of their mission heavy on their minds. They had retrieved another piece of the codex, but the journey was far from over. The forces they were up against were growing stronger, and the team knew that the worst was yet to come. As dawn broke over the mansion, the team gathered for their next briefing. The latest fragment of the codex had revealed the location of an ancient monastery on the outskirts of a remote village. The clue was cryptic, hinting at something buried deep within the monastery's abandoned catacombs. "We have to move quickly," Thatcher said, rolling out a map of the area. "The fragment suggests that something or someone is protecting the next piece. We need to be ready for anything." The journey to the monastery was uneventful, the weather turning cooler and foggier as they approached their destination. The monastery loomed on the horizon like a ghostly silhouette, It had been abandoned for decades, its stone walls overgrown with ivy and moss. The team parked the SUV and approached the entrance, which was partially blocked by fallen stones and overgrown vegetation. Thatcher and Andrew cleared the debris, revealing a heavy wooden door. With a collective effort, they pushed it open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Inside, the monastery was a maze of crumbling stone corridors and abandoned chapels. The air was thick with dust and the scent of mildew. A cold draft seemed to blow from nowhere, causing the team to shiver despite their heavy coats. "Split up and search for any clues," Thatcher instructed. "We need to find the catacombs and any hints about the next codex fragment." Mia and Kate explored the chapel area, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the stained glass windows. Andrew and Lily headed towards the library, which was cluttered with ancient, decaying manuscripts. As they searched, strange occurrences began to unfold. The temperature dropped suddenly in certain areas, and the distant echoes of chanting filled the air. Lily felt a cold hand brush against her arm, but when she turned, no one was there. "Did anyone else hear that?" Lily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Andrew, engrossed in an old book, looked up. "I think we're not alone here." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and a loud crash echoed through the monastery. The team regrouped, only to find that a large section of the floor had collapsed, revealing a hidden passageway. "Looks like we found our way down," Thatcher said, peering into the dark abyss. They descended into the catacombs, their flashlights barely illuminating the narrow, damp passage. The walls were lined with ancient burial niches, each containing the skeletal remains of long-deceased monks. The air was suffused with a sense of dread. The team navigated the winding tunnels until they reached a large, circular chamber. At its center stood an altar, covered in strange symbols and artifacts. The walls were adorned with grotesque carvings, depicting scenes of torment and suffering. "This must be it," Mia said, examining the symbols. "We need to find the codex fragment and get out of here." As they approached the altar, a chilling wail filled the chamber. Ghostly figures materialized around them, their spectral forms reaching out with bony hands. The team readied their weapons, but the ghosts seemed to dissipate into the darkness before they could engage. A figure appeared at the far end of the chamber, a shadowy, monk-like apparition. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and it advanced slowly, chanting in a language they couldn't understand. "Stay focused," Thatcher shouted, raising his weapon. Lily and Mia began to perform a counter-ritual, chanting incantations and using their energy to drive the ghosts away. The apparition howled in fury, its form flickering with dark energy. After a fierce struggle, the team managed to banish the apparition and the remaining ghosts. Exhausted but victorious, they searched the altar and found the codex fragment hidden within a hollowed-out section. As they made their way back to the surface, the monastery seemed to calm, as if the dark presence had been lifted. They emerged into the daylight, relieved and weary, but knowing their quest was far from over. With the latest codex fragment secured, the team returned to the mansion to regroup. The new clue pointed to Ashbury Manor, a grand estate known for its tragic history and recent reports of disturbing hauntings. The drive to Ashbury Manor was filled with an uneasy silence. The estate, a sprawling Victorian mansion, was surrounded by overgrown gardens and neglected grounds. Its once grand facade was now weathered and decrepit. "This place gives me the creeps," Kate said, as they parked and approached the entrance. The heavy front door creaked open, revealing a grand foyer covered in dust and cobwebs. The opulence of the past was evident in the tarnished chandeliers and faded wallpaper, but the grandeur was overshadowed by an aura of decay. Thatcher led the team through the mansion, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and neglect. "We need to check the basement," Thatcher said. The fragment's clue hinted at something hidden there. The basement entrance was blocked by a heavy iron door, but with some effort, they managed to force it open. The stairs descended into darkness, and the air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, They found a large storage area filled with old furniture and boxes. In the corner was a door leading to a smaller, hidden chamber. The team entered the chamber, where they found an old, intricately carved box resting on a pedestal. The box was covered in strange symbols that matched those from the Codex fragment. "Here it is," Mia said, examining the box. "Let's see what's inside." As she opened the box, a sudden gust of wind extinguished their flashlights, plunging them into darkness. Shadows danced on the walls, and a low, mournful moan filled the air. The team scrambled to relight their flashlights, only to find the chamber filled with ghostly apparitions. The spirits seemed to be pleading for release, their faces etched with sorrow and anger. "These must be the victims of the manor's past," Lily said, her voice shaking. "We need to calm them down and get the fragment." The team used their knowledge of rituals and ghostly lore to attempt communication with the spirits. They performed a series of rites to acknowledge the spirits' pain and offer them a sense of closure. As they worked, the ghostly figures began to dissipate, their mournful cries fading into silence. The team found the Codex fragment within the box, its surface glowing with a strange, ethereal light. With the fragment secured, they left the chamber and made their way back to the surface. The air in the manor seemed lighter, as if the spirits had found peace. As they left Ashbury Manor, the team felt a mix of relief and apprehension. They had recovered another fragment, but the true challenge lay ahead. The mystery of the Codex and the forces that guarded it were far from over, and the team braced themselves for the trials to come. The sky was a steely gray as the team drove towards the remote location of the next Codex fragment, an ancient stone obelisk buried deep within the remote highlands of Scotland. The obelisk, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, was reputed to be a focal point for dark energies and malevolent spirits. The remote location was accessed via a narrow, winding road flanked by dense, foreboding forests. As the team neared the site, the air grew colder and the fog thickened, creating an atmosphere that seemed almost tangible. "Looks like we're heading into a ghost story," Thatcher said, peering through the mist. "Keep your eyes peeled and stay alert." The team disembarked at the base of a steep hill, their breath visible in the frigid air. The obelisk loomed above them, a jagged silhouette against the gray sky. Strange symbols and runes covered its surface, carved with meticulous precision. The ground around the obelisk was disturbed, suggesting recent activity. As they approached, the atmosphere grew heavy. The ground beneath them seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic vibration. Lily, clutching her EMF meter, noted unusual readings, fluctuating wildly as if reacting to some unseen force. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Kate said, her voice tinged with anxiety. "It's like the whole place is alive." "Stay sharp," Thatcher instructed, as the team spread out to investigate. "We're looking for any clues that might lead us to the fragment." Suddenly, a guttural, otherworldly growl echoed through the trees. Shadows moved unnaturally, shifting and coalescing into indistinct forms. The team's flashlights flickered as an oppressive darkness seemed to descend upon them. "We've got company," Andrew warned, his voice barely audible over the growing din. From the depths of the fog emerged ghostly figures, phantoms with hollow eyes and twisted expressions. They circled the obelisk, their moans blending with the howling wind. The team prepared their gear, setting up protective wards and attempting to communicate with the spirits. As they began their ritual, the ground trembled violently. The obelisk's runes glowed a sickly green, and the spirits grew more agitated. The team struggled to maintain focus, their equipment malfunctioning under the pressure. "I can't get a stable reading," Mia shouted, wrestling with her equipment. Just then, a massive shadowy figure materialized, an imposing entity with burning red eyes and an aura of pure malevolence. It roared in fury, sending the spirits into a frenzy. The team fought to hold their ground, their protective barriers flickering and wavering. In the chaos, Thatcher noticed a hidden compartment in the base of the obelisk. Desperate, he pried it open to reveal a hidden cavity. Inside was the Codex fragment, its surface pulsating with an eerie, otherworldly glow. "Got it!" Thatcher yelled, clutching the fragment tightly. The team retreated as the obelisk's power began to wane. The malevolent entity roared one last time before dissipating into the fog. The spirits, freed from their torment, began to fade as well, leaving the team alone in the now quiet clearing. "We're not out of the woods yet," Thatcher said, breathing heavily. "Let's get out of here before something else decides to show up." With the latest Codex fragment secured, the team returned to their base, the sprawling mansion where the investigation had begun. The mansion, now their command center, was filled with maps, notes, and equipment, all laid out in a frantic attempt to piece together the mystery of the Codex. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Each fragment they recovered seemed to unravel deeper layers of the mystery, revealing a more sinister plot than they had imagined. "All right, let's take stock," Thatcher said, addressing the team. "We've got the fragment, but we need to understand what it means and what's next." Mia and Andrew began analyzing the fragment, using their equipment to examine the symbols and inscriptions. Kate and Lily worked on deciphering the clues and piecing together the Codex's purpose. As the team worked late into the night, strange occurrences began to unfold. Lights flickered, and eerie whispers filled the air. The mansion seemed to shift and change, as if reacting to the Codex fragments. "Something's not right," Lily said, glancing around nervously. "It's like the house itself is alive." Suddenly, the room went dark. The team's flashlights and equipment failed, plunging them into an impenetrable darkness. An oppressive presence seemed to fill the room, and an ominous, low growl reverberated through the walls. Panic set in as ghostly apparitions materialized, figures from the mansion's past, their faces twisted in agony. The team scrambled to maintain control, their protective wards flickering in the darkness. As they fought to stabilize their equipment and protect themselves, Thatcher made a critical discovery. The Codex fragment held a hidden message, revealing that the true danger was not just the spirits, but the Codex itself, a conduit for a far more powerful and malevolent force. "We need to finish this," Thatcher said, determination in his voice. "If we don't, whatever's controlling these spirits will only grow stronger." With renewed focus, the team worked together to perform a final, powerful ritual. They chanted incantations and performed complex rites, using the Codex fragments to seal away the dark force threatening them. As the ritual reached its climax, a blinding light filled the room. The spirits, now released from their torment, began to fade. The oppressive presence lifted, and the mansion returned to its former state. Exhausted but victorious, the team surveyed their work. The Codex was now complete, and its dark power had been contained. The mansion, once a place of fear, was now quiet and peaceful. "We did it," Thatcher said, looking around the now serene mansion. "But this isn't over. There will always be more mysteries, more darkness to uncover." The team left the mansion, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Their journey had been harrowing, but they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The Codex's secrets had been revealed, but the world remained full of enigmas waiting to be solved.